standing here listening to the shouting, I feel the Holy Spirit just saying, when you hear that, I want you to hear the sound of Rachel weeping for her children, because it's a sound of pain that we hear. And what the enemy intends for evil, the Lord always uses for good. I even wrote down, my name is Andrea MacDonald. So, my name is Andrea MacDonald. I'm married. I have 4 amazing children and 2 beautiful grandchildren. I grew up here in Fredericton, and we live here now. We've lived here for almost 7 years. We lived in Halifax for about 17 years prior to that. I was born in St. John, New Brunswick, at a Salvation Army home for unwed mothers. My birth mother was almost 18 years old. She was the oldest child of 6 in a home with an alcoholic father, and she just did not believe that it was an option to keep me at that time. And I am so grateful that for her, it was also not an option to have an abortion. I am grateful for my life. I am grateful for the lives of my children. In 1987, my husband, now 28 years, called me from out west where he'd been living for almost a year, and he asked me to marry him. We had not had a relationship for almost 2 years, and so I, of course, said yes, as you do. I really believed that he was the man that God wanted me to marry, and about 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I remember the desperation. I remember the fear. I was working at the psychiatric ward at the hospital at the time, and I remember thinking, I should definitely be in here. I remember the call from my doctor. I remember her just saying, I can just book you an appointment up at the hospital to have a D&C, a dilatation and curettage, just like that. I remember thinking how easy that would be. I remember knowing that she didn't even consider that I might remain pregnant. I remember that. I remember thinking there is no way I can do this. Stay pregnant. I cannot be pregnant. I know abortion is wrong. But I had already made so many mistakes, so many wrong choices. I just believed I'd ruined my life, that everything was just going to be a mess and was a mess, and I just didn't think I had a choice. And I really believe that a lot of women have abortions not because they're pro-choice, but because they believe the lie that they have no choice.
Right.
The desperation and fear and the emotion and the pressure in the situation is overwhelming. Somehow God's grace, just His kind, gentle hand on my life. I don't know how, but I told somebody at work, and once I had spoken about it out loud, I just knew that there was no way that I could have an abortion. My heart just breaks for women who would give anything to turn back the hands of time so that they could make a different choice. I think many women would choose life. And I pray for the church to become a safe place for women to grieve and heal, and that they wouldn't have to carry their grief and their pain in silence. So, this is the Reader's Digest version of my story. My husband came home from out west to marry me, and we decided to keep this baby. Our son, Josh, is 28 years old. He is an amazing person. He's an amazing son. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a friend. He's a worship leader. In 2000, my heart was stirred to look to see if I could find any evidence that my birth mother might be looking for me. it was just the Lord stirring in my heart. I was overwhelmed with thinking that if I had given up a child for adoption, that I would want to be able to let them know that I was okay. And so I just wanted to see if I could find evidence so that I could let someone know that I was okay. We actually found that my birth mother had just started looking for me. Her information had only been on the New Brunswick Parent Finder's website that we stumbled across for about 3 days. So 3 days later, this all happened so fast. 3 days later, my birth mother called my house in Halifax where we were living, and I was on my way out of the house to pick up my children from school, but my mom, who raised me, was there, and so I just handed her the phone. Growing up, I remember so many times that my mom and dad would say, I wish that we could have the opportunity to say thank you to whoever it was that gave you to us. And so that day, my two mothers got to share their hearts. They got to say the things that they would have always wanted to say to each other. It was very precious. My mom, who raised me, lost 4 babies. She lost one when she was 3 months pregnant, one when she was 7 months pregnant, and 2 full-term babies. Of those 2 full-term babies, one was a stillborn, and one died shortly after birth. So for her, adoption was the gift of life. It was the gift of motherhood, and it was the gift of family. A week later, I received a letter from my birth grandmother, and it said, Dear Andrea, I'm Pat. I'm your grandmother. I've been praying for you your whole life. I was carefully knit together and placed in my mother's womb. I was never a mistake in the heart of God. And my son was fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of a good, good God. And so it's just my prayer that our nation would become realigned with the heart of God, who is the giver and the sustainer of all life. Amen.